Good evening and welcome to the Lithgow City Council Ordinary Meeting of Council for the 23rd of January 2023. Acknowledgement of Country. I would like to begin this meeting by acknowledging the traditional owners of this land on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to both elders past, present and emerging. Declaration of webcasting. I inform all those in attendance at this meeting that the meeting is being webcast and that those in attendance should refrain from making any defamatory statements concerning any person, councillor or employee, and refrain from discussing those matters subject to closed council proceedings as indicated in clause 14.1 of the Code of Meeting Practice. Everyone's present tonight, that's wonderful. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest tonight?
Yep, I've got a pecuniary interest in motion 9.1.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on the 28th of November 2022. Could I have somebody move that they're correct? Thank you.
Happy to move, me.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. All those in favour say aye. Thank you. Confirmation of the minutes of the extraordinary meeting of Council held on the 16th of January 2023. Could I have somebody move those? Thank you. Councillor O'Connor. Seconded, thank you. Councillor Goodwin. All those in favour, thank you. Thank you. Commemorations and announcements. On behalf of the Lithgow City Council, I wish to express sincere sympathy and condolences to families who have lost loved ones since the last council meeting. Any person registered to speak during public forum on matters included in the business paper and registered via the council website prior to 12 noon on the day of the meeting will have the opportunity to speak. There will only be 2 speakers for and against on each matter on the business paper. Public forum will be allocated half an hour time in total and each speaker having 3 minutes to speak. Speaker not registered for public forum will have an opportunity to speak on matters on the business paper if time permits. There are no mayoral minutes tonight.
We've got some people speaking.
Yes, we've got residents that are requesting to speak. Number 1 is Christy Carney. Christy's dialing in, so we'll put it in my microphone. And it's Walgan Road Recovery Alternate Route Construction Impacted Business Owner. Hello, Christy. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Can everyone hear this?
Turn the volume up one more.
It's a different phone device. Just one moment, please, Christy. We're turning up the volume. All phones are different. That's maximum. Hello, Christy.
Yeah.
Yes, that's excellent. Thank you. Can everyone hear? Public gallery here. Thank you. When you're ready, Christy.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to address Council tonight. It comes at quite a difficult time for many of us here in Walgan Valley, whether you call the Valley home or operate a business in the Valley. I'm speaking to you tonight from the perspective of a local business owner that has been significantly impacted by the closure of our only access road in and out of Walgan Valley, Walgan Gap, rather than as a resident and community member. That responsibility I will leave with the Walgan Valley Association, who have worked tirelessly in representing our community and have endeavoured to work with Lithgow City Council developing a workable solution to this latest natural disaster. As a background, I own and operate Walgan Valley Eco Tours, an advanced ecotourism certified tour business that operates low impact nature-based walking tours and wildlife encounters in the World Heritage listed Wallamai and Gardens of Stone region and the newly proclaimed Gardens of Stone State Conservation Area. Transport infrastructure, notably safe and regularly maintained road networks, are critical for not only my business, but for Walgan Valley and the Seven Valleys destination. Sir Tim Clark, CEO of Emirates Airlines, saw the potential of Walgan Valley for the development of their luxury conservation-based resort in 2007. They invested $130 million in its construction and road and critical infrastructure improvements in the valley. Since its opening in 2010, Emirates' one and only Walgan Valley has made further investment in the marketing of the resort and valley, domestically and internationally, with several businesses, including my very own, indirectly benefiting from this. The investment has led to a burgeoning tourism industry in the valley that would not be possible without the resort. After 6 years of working with Emirates' one and only Walgan Valley, and upon seeing the potential of sustainable nature-based tourism experiences, it was a reason why I developed my ecotourism business in 2016. According to Lithgow City Council's very own Lithgow Regional Economic Development Strategy 2018 to 2022, a document that visually features Walgan Valley throughout, the tourism industry contributes 8.4% of employment and 5.9% or 62 million of gross value add to the Lithgow regional economy. It is also this strategy that identifies investment in local road infrastructure to help drive local business capability and inward business investment. But the long-term viability of our tourism industry is on the line. If we don't have good road infrastructure and road transportation infrastructure, then we are unable to access all possible markets for the sustainable development of Walgan Valley and the Seven Valleys destination. As it stands, my business is temporarily closed due to the failure of Walgan Gap. And whilst the opening of Donkey Steps may enable the resort to operate, albeit in a limited capacity, my business and several other locally owned and operated businesses are not afforded that opportunity. Access limitations for Donkey Steps, notably limited hours of access, forward drive only restricted vehicle access, and the escorting by property holders of visiting non-residents into the valley is impractical and is not conducive to business solvency. This solvency is compounded by national park closures due to the previous mentioned conditions. Whilst in principle I support the recommendations set out within 11.3.2 Walgan Road recovery and alternate route construction, it doesn't go far enough in building business confidence and will lead to the collapse of Walgan Valley's tourism industry. I therefore propose for the consideration of councillors the inclusion of the following recommendation: that council undertake the sealing of the remainder of Donkey Steps temporary access trail as a matter of urgency, allowing for access by two-wheel drive vehicles, with funding sought by council through the New South Wales Government's $500 million regional and local roads repair program or other funding programs deemed suitable. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you. Appreciate the time you spent calling us. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
The second speaker tonight will be Sarah Denmead, Walgan Road Recovery and Alternate Route Construction Supports Recommendation. Thank you, Sarah.
That better? Thank you. Thank you also for the opportunity to address Council in relation to the Walgan Road Recovery and Alternate Route Construction. My name is Sarah Denmead. I live in Walgan Valley and I'm the President of the Walgan Valley Association. Our association incorporated 2 years ago, 12 months after the valley was annihilated by the Gospers Mountain Fire. After successful grant applications to state and Commonwealth governments and hundreds of volunteer hours, our DA for our community shelter was lodged towards the end of last year. Ironically, the shelter's future hangs in the balance as we find ourselves cut off again with the closure of Walgan Road at Walgan Gap. Many residents continue to absorb the cost of alternative accommodation, transport and changes to work hours without financial assistance from any level of government. We have completed council surveys to provide evidence of personal and business hardship, but we continue to be told by council staff we're ineligible for assistance despite initial and repeated assurances to the contrary. How can we further support council to ensure we can access the financial support we need? Mr Edgecombe's report states the full cost of the temporary route and final restoration solution will be met by the natural disaster relief and recovery arrangements. In reference to the report's second recommendation, we appreciate your consideration of subsidising two-wheel drive and all-wheel drive vehicle recovery. However, we can't understand why this cost does not fall under the same state government funding arrangements as Council is currently accessing. To the third recommendation, we greatly appreciate the efforts of the contractor, Public Works Advisory and Council in building the Donkey Steps track under difficult conditions in a very short period of time. We all agree the Donkey Steps is not a long-term solution, restricted to daylight hours, residents only, and unsuitable for heavy vehicle or two-wheel drive access. We are one of the LGA's 7 valleys and part of the New Gardens of Stone State Conservation Area, but without a serviceable road, the valley is not viable as a place to live or conduct business. When the Donkey Steps track opens, we remain vulnerable to weather events. We ask that Council commit to providing an all-weather surface to the track while a permanent solution and construction be expedited. We ask for 24-hour access to the road once open, as it will help overcome the uneasiness of being locked in or out of the valley.
Move an extension.
Would you like an extension, Sarah, or have you finished speaking?
I'd like an extension.
Certainly.
Please.
All those in favour say aye. Thank you.
In the meantime, and while work to the Donkey Steps continues, we implore Council to ensure the Walgan Gap remains accessible in case of an emergency. In addition to the stakeholders Mr Edgecombe has thanked within his report, we extend our heartfelt thanks to Tim Stanhope and the one and only Walgan Valley team for their support in general and their coordination of the convoys in and out of the valley, as well as David Cruss from New South Wales National Parks and Wildlife Service, the Rapid Relief Team and Green Spot. Thanks to our members and committee for their time, effort and support. At the request of Mr Edgecombe and Matthew Johnson, our team ensures residents and landholders receive vital information and help to coordinate internal and external support. The omission of the association's role within Mr Edgecombe's report is disheartening. Lastly, please all promise me one thing, that when you hop in your car to drive home tonight, you consider 2 things. How would you feel if you had to cough up $1,000 to access your vehicle through no fault of your own? And once you find the money, where are you going to go tonight if you're unable to get home? Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Are there any other speakers this evening in public forum? 9.1, notice of motion. Councillor Leslie.
Excuse me, Mayor Statham.
Yes.
Would we be able to move a procedural motion to move Walgan business item to first on the agenda?
Yes, can I have a seconder? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Leslie. All those in favour say aye. Thank you. Where was that? What page is it?
Page 24.
Item 11.3.2, Walgan Road Recovery and Alternate Route Construction.
Happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Who seconded that? Councillor O'Connor? Councillor Goodsell, would you like to speak to that?
I would, thank you, Mayor. And I'm sorry if I'm a little bit nervous. This one's sort of gotten to me in the last couple of days, and I've had regular communication with with Walgett residents. So I do have an amendment. I'd like to speak to it first and then put the amendment at the end if that's okay. So there's no doubt that the Walgett residents have had far more than they can deal with over the last few years, and now they've had their only access in and out of the valley compromised, maybe closing forever. Since November, residents have had their freedom and lives severely restricted, not being able to leave their home and the valley at will. Only at scheduled times, once daily, and then only if they fit into a convoy of 5 vehicles, 2 of which are Emirates, 2 or 3 possibly, 1 council vehicle, and there's 2 spots left over. So, and they also have to book through the national parks to get out of their valley, and that's incidentally booked out weeks in advance. So I can only sympathise and apologise to those members from the Walgett Valley Association and the community down there for not reaching out earlier. Work, family, school commitments, appointments, medication, all the things that the speakers have touched on. At the moment, the weather is cool, but I can imagine all in the valley were elevated recently during the hotter periods, with the road closed, donkey steps unable to be completed, and the coach road locked. I can't imagine, and I'm sorry. I'm also thankful, someone I've known for 45, 46 years, Ian Coates, that he was in Lithgow that night or that day, and he wasn't in the Walgett Valley. And there's no doubt we all hope that a situation like his isn't repeated within the valley with a medical emergency. There's no doubt that Council, Jonathan Edgecombe, General Manager Craig Butler, and all of their teams have gone above and beyond to, they've moved heaven and earth to get what they've done. It's an amazing result, and I'm certain the residents of Walgett are extremely grateful. I do have a couple of questions. Some of them have been highlighted in the speech by Sarah Denmead tonight. If I could please ask those through you, Mayor. If Council have assurances that the full cost of this $2 million, the work they've done so far on the donkey steps, this cost will be borne by natural disaster relief and recovery arrangements. I'd like to ask, I touched on it briefly with the General Manager this afternoon, why the residents not entitled to disaster recovery funds, $1,000 an adult, $400 a child. Construction of the donkey steps is covered by natural disasters, but not the residents or businesses, which also then would qualify the $1,000. Why isn't that also included in the disaster recovery money that Council's going to be given back for the work that they've done? If I could have that one answered, please.
Mr Edgecombe.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. I can't offer a conclusive answer to that question, but I do understand that the relief offered to residents and businesses is administered by a different government department than Transport for New South Wales, who manage the disaster recovery funding arrangements on behalf of the federal government. But we have requested that representatives of Resilience New South Wales attend the next meeting with the community so that those questions can be answered directly by those who have the information.
Just following on from that, Mr Edgecombe, sorry. So have we not made urgent representations to our state and federal member for these residents who are trying to survive, and not only survive, they've got to fork out $1,000 if they want their 2-wheel drive accessible, and there's 34 of them trapped in the valley.
We have offered that support. We've spoken with the state member. We've spoken with the bureaucracy of Resilience New South Wales as well. Rachel Nicolau, former community resilience officer, made significant representations on that on behalf of the community with respect to this matter. But if the council wishes, that we can continue that advocacy at a later after the meeting at a later time.
Sorry to keep hounding on with all these questions as a first speaker. Interim access, it says in the report that the donkey steps, you can confirm that there will be 4-wheel drive interim access. Can I confirm what interim means?
Continuing through you, Mayor Statham, interim basically reflects the fact that the project is sorry, I'm trying to think of the word I'm using. It's an incremental process. We're going to be The steep section of the road has just been concreted. Once that's complete and cured, our attention will immediately turn to further design work and construction work that can occur to improve the resilience of the track and improve the accessibility by residents. So things like guardrail, reflective posts and bitumen seal of the entire length are all being considered.
So no time frame, 2 to 4 years. Is that something that's been uttered? It's just that if that's the case, if it's going to be a long period of time, 4-wheel drive access only, only residents are allowed in, visitors have to be escorted on and off the site, landholders are allowed in, the gates are locked after 7 p.m. and opened at 7 a.m. Is it possible that that's nearer rather than farther away?
The 2 to 4 year time frame refers to the more permanent solution. There's a lot of process of design, relevant approvals, and construction work that must go into that project. So 2 to 4 years is a reasonable time frame to apply to that project. But in terms of the donkey steps, as I mentioned, it's an iterative process we haven't really had the luxury of being able to go through a full-scale design given the time required to get this operational. So as the community gets more accustomed to the nature of the road and as we implement further design and safety features like bitumen seal, like guardrail, those conditions of access will be reconsidered on a regular basis, perhaps even weekly, and we'll communicate with the community about how those can be relaxed once we're confident that safe access is guaranteed.
Okay, I do understand that you haven't had a plan for the road, that it's just been on the run, and you've done an amazing job with a bulldozer and looking in one direction and finding a path in another. If like what Christy touched on the phone, they don't have 2-wheel drive access for residents and visitors, no business in the valley will be feasible for that duration until they have 2-wheel drive and visitor access for 24 hours. 6 to 8 businesses and cattle and sheep unable to get out, so a massive impact on our tourism and agriculture in the valley. If there would have been an emergency in the valley tonight, how would the residents fare there to seek emergency medical care? Donkeys not finished, old coach roads locked and bolted, and access up Walgan Road is 1.5 to 2 metres. What do the residents do there, and how do we best resolve their anxiety around not being able to get out of the valley with a hard lock road and no alternative?
Mayor, I might answer this. So since the outset, the hard reality is that at the beginning of November, Walgan Valley was denied access. The Walgan Road cannot be used. We've received verbal advice and will soon receive a report to confirm that there's a catastrophic risk with that road. Council then moved to secure an alternate access, but it's not desirable either, which is the old coach road. In parallel with that, Council moved to cut in a new road, and you're right, it's amazing progress within 3 months that Government, Council and many other contributors have achieved. We're hopeful that at the beginning of February we will be able to open up a road which meets the first goal, and it's only the first goal, and that is to provide an access into and out with safer and freer movement. The next goal is to move to 2-wheel drive access. But to go back to the question about what happens if there's an emergency, we've done detailed planning and the access and egress today is through, for the next couple of weeks, through Coach Road. We've also liaised with government departments, and all emergency agencies are aware of those arrangements, and they're also aware that if there's an emergency evacuation requiring a more urgent removal of patients, that helicopters are to be used. But there is no other option available until we get to that point where we've got 4-wheel drive access through the donkey steps, and that's only a matter of a week and a half, days away, Mr. Edgecombe's telling me.
Okay, I'm sorry. So the 1.5 metre access that was left up the side of Walgan Gap Road, that's not to be used at all?
It's not to be used unless unless the emergency event calls for that to come into play, at the considerable risk of using it, all other options would be exhausted first.
It's my understanding that the coach road is significantly unstable as well, which restricts national parks won't take any more than 2 convoys a day and no more than 5 vehicles. What's the difference of risk between the old coach road and Walgan Road?
There's been a risk assessment done for the coach road, and we're operating in accordance with that risk assessment. The advice for Walgan Road is to not use that access at all.
Can I just ask 2 more questions? One is the matter of the $2 million funding that we celebrated in Walgan Valley, and they're going to have to potentially hand that money back to the government because they're unable to meet milestones. Is there some way that we can prevent that from happening?
We've already made those representations, and we've joined the association up with the funding body.
Okay, thank you. So with all of that said, I have the amendment that come through the public forum tonight. I have spoken with the General Manager in regard to that to assure him that I'm not trying to stitch council up. I'm not trying to cause problems, but I think it needs to be stronger than what it is. And that is that he has confirmed that the administration's ambition is to pursue a second access, and this being a 2-wheel drive access, it's not assured, and that this can be achieved given the terrain. It'll require funding. So I'd like to amend the current recommendation. And I'm sorry, Trinity, that this is lengthy. So I had point 1, that council confirm its commitment to examining and, if possible, providing 2-wheel drive access to the valley as a matter of urgency, and to achieve this, representations be made for government funding. Example, the New South Wales government's $500 million regional and local roads repair program. What? Sorry, a whole lot? Yep, sorry. That council confirm its commitment to examining and, if possible, providing 2-wheel drive access to the valley as a matter of urgency. And to achieve this, representations be made for government funding the New South Wales government's $500 million regional and local roads repair program. And the resources to manage and deliver this additional level of access. Point 2 is the old point 1. So note the appointment and input into Council's 2022-23 works program and budget of the Walgan Valley Access Work Via. 3 is approve a single $300 subsidy per vehicle. I haven't really thought about this one, but that can just remain the same. And 4, as it reads as 3, identify the reinstatement of a permanent resilient access into the Walgan Valley as a key project within its IP&R documents. Full stop.
I'll second that motion. Could I have somebody please second that? It is a motion. Pardon?
You just need a second for the motion.
Yeah, so Councillor Bryce, you're happy to second the motion? Thank you. Councillor Goodsell, would you like to speak to that?
Not at the moment.
Councillor Bryce?
Councillor Goodsell made some very good points there. We need to install, and as soon as possible, the two-wheel drive access within the valley, in and out of the valley, for the businesses as well as the safety of all the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Yes,
Councillor O'Connor?
I think the rest of the Timfrey Road should be tarred as soon as possible. Surely to God, if there's a four-wheel drive in it, it can be tarred the next day. If it's graded, why can't it be tarred? That's number one. The next thing is, for the people moving their cars, the council has a tiltry that's parked over there most of the time in the shed. Why don't they send somebody down there and move their cars for nothing, if they can't get up or down, and bring the cars up with the tiltry, and so they don't have to go paying anybody else to do it, bring it up. Wouldn't that be sensible?
I'll just ask Jonathan Edgecombe, please, to speak to that, Councillor O'Connor.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. You're correct, council does have a tilt tray and we use it regularly to move vehicles around. Unfortunately, the unit's not a four-wheel drive capable vehicle, which is why to date we've engaged the services of GRS Towing and put them in contact with both Emirates and the community to provide that service. While the road wasn't tarred, we couldn't guarantee that our vehicle wasn't suitable for access.
Thank you, Mr Edgecombe. Any other points, Councillor O'Connor?
Yes, the only viable route down to that road is the road that's been down there for the last 80 or 100 years. And nobody can tell me that you can go down to the bottom of that and find the rock and start building on the way up, the same as every batter and roadworks in the world. And the minute you compact something down the bottom, it stabilizes, you work your way up. It wouldn't, if it took more than 3 months, I'd give it away to do the bloody lot of it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor McGee?
Yeah, so just a quick question through you, Mayor Statham. So the tarring of the Donkey Steps Road, would that provide two-wheel drive access straight away, like if that was done?
Mr Edgecombe?
Through you, Mayor Statham, it is the intention, but as I mentioned before, we've been running on the fly a little bit with this project to get it delivered as quickly as possible, so we're not 100% sure the available traction and the friction that concrete surface will give to the vehicles. So once it's cured, it's been laid, once it's cured, which was 7 days from the end of last week, we're going to be out there conducting risk assessments and making sure that it is safe for two-wheel drive vehicles. If that is the case, then we'll consult with the community about what that means and open the track up accordingly with perhaps a couple of conditions applied, but we'll be working towards two-wheel drive vehicle access as quickly as possible.
Just to add to that though, and for the public and to put on the public record, it needs to be acknowledged that the road's at about 32 degrees across with embankments that plummet into a valley. We receive black ice and snow in this city. If you Google the steepest roads in the world, you'll find they're in this order of 32 degrees and they're not in our climate. So certainly sealing the road, raising culverts, getting out of creeks, all of that will assist with two-wheel drive access. But I'm pleased that it says if possible, because we're not assured that in the current alignment, we're hopeful, but we're not assured at this point that we'll be able to provide two-wheel drive access out there. The other scenario is, what we might do is remove a cable, a telecommunications cable, which is buried underneath the current road that we've cut in, at considerable expense again, move it to the side, and then cut down a further 9 metres. But to do that, we then have to again deny access up this track that we've just built and push people back onto the coach road. This is the balancing act that we're looking to strike all the time. So I just wanted to put on the public record, our ambition, the administration's, council's ambition, is to nudge up that hierarchy and get to more fluid and freer access as soon as possible. But there are some challenges in getting to two-wheel drive access.
Thank you, Mr Butler. Councillor Leslie.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. I also received representations from this, and I received an email which I would like to read. I've deleted at least 2/3 of it as it's too personal, but the rest I think needs to be read. So this is the letter. I am just frustrated by the way LCC has treated the residents in the valley. There's a lot of anxiety and anger between everyone, which is stemming almost from the lack of communication from LCC. While everyone appreciates all the work and timely effort which has gone into the new emergency access road, LCC still seems to be withholding information and refuse to be upfront or honest with the residents about their concerns. We have been promised a copy of the REF, Review of Environmental Factors, which was apparently due before the construction commenced, but we have not heard any more about it. A geotechnical survey of the Walgan Road was also due back in February 2022, but no one has been given a chance to lay eyes on it yet. Are these available for the public to view, and where, please? Or maybe council can just confirm that the Walgan Gap is closed forever. I then skipped a bit. It continues. There are also endangered glossy black cockatoos nesting on the little island between the Donkey Steps and Walgan Road. I sincerely hope this will be mentioned in the environmental findings, the REF document. Not much effort is being made in that area to limit tree loss, habitat loss at the moment. And the writer would appreciate any sort of feedback about what is going on at this end of the town. This affects a lot of people in a variety of different ways. Businesses, big and small, farmers with cattle who are stuck in the valley at the moment, and even a little school. Lithgow is trying to attract more tourists to the area, but seems to be ignoring one of its biggest natural attractions of the area, the Walgan Valley. And then, if I could just speak on in my own voice, it does seem to me that full communication in these events is essential, and I can only feel in this instance it's been inadequate. But with a total expenditure of over $3 million, see the financial implications in this report, Lithgow Council is unprepared to pay out less than 1% of the cost to help these people get their cars out, but expect them, it's included in this in the current motion, and expect them to pay $700 per car. Remember, these people are not at fault, and I'd like to move an amendment to this motion for point 2, and that is that point 2 of this motion be changed to read that the application be amended to include the cost of recovery of vehicles in the Walgan Valley in any funding agreements reached. If the council is unable to convince the state government of the equity in this, then the cost of the recovery of these vehicles should be borne by the council.
I'm happy to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Thank you, Councillor Leslie. All those in favour?
Sorry, if I just... No, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Councillor Marnie.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thank you to Sarah for coming in tonight, and also Christy speaking to us. I concur with Councillor Leslie in his views on the subsidisation or the inadequacy of the subsidy for the vehicles. We have a singular entry to a community that has been withdrawn from them, not by any by natural disaster events. I don't think it's appropriate that the community pay that cost. And also note that in an earlier item, we talked, I've got a response from management in regard to a motion by Councillor Leslie, which refers to the Walgan Road, which talks to the possibility of funding subject to the recognition of the project being disaster recovery funding eligible under existing criteria. I'm a little bit perplexed how two of the hottest years on history, followed by the largest landscape scale fire, followed by two of the wettest years on history, don't constitute a natural disaster. I'm not sure what is, if that isn't. So I'm just interested, and we'll deal with that later on in another item, but to me this is quite clear that this is a significant natural disaster that's isolated a community, and I think that, and I appreciate Councillor Goodsall's words on this matter. I think it is something that needs a great deal of urgency. I'm perplexed if there's some indecision about whether this is eligible for funding. So personally, I'd like to see a much faster resolution of that issue. I appreciate what staff are doing with what is an extremely complex engineering challenge, but I support Councillor Leslie's move that the cost not be borne any further by the residents, and I thank Councillor O'Connor for his suggestion of other alternate ways to deliver that out to the community.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Councillor Coleman.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Statham. I've been listening to the debate very carefully, but I've got a few things that I would like to say different to what the other councillors have said, though I agree with majority of most statements. What greatly concerns me, and I've read the report, that on the bottom of this report, Council identified the potential for a geotechnical risk post-bushfire in December 2019 with the burn of all vegetation. Business case and work programs were developed for state and federal funding for major repairs of the Walgan Road in the gap. $6 million, my understanding, which states the report, and these applications were unsuccessful. The state and the federal government did not approve it. So for me, it's greatly concerning that these community, 150 residents, as late as 2019, have been left high and dry. It greatly concerns me that these residents have been struggling physically, mentally and financially. And yes, I support Councillor Leslie's amendment. I am pleased to note that the administration is preparing a documentation for the application for funding, and positive discussions have been had with the New South Wales Government representatives. I hope that we don't have a repeat of what happened in 2019 when the state and the federal funding was unsuccessful. We need to advocate strongly. We need to call on both the state and the federal member to get behind this issue. And I hope, considering there's a state election coming, that we can turn the Honourable Paul Toole upside down and drop as many pennies out of him as possible, because these residents deserve everything that we can possibly do for them.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Any other speakers? Councillor McGee.
Yes, I just think that, bringing out 48 cars at $1,000 a car is not something that council should have to bear. I think that $300 subsidy per car is very fair. I do feel for these people, absolutely, but it's not our fault either, and it's not the government's fault. Obviously the catastrophic problem with the road, with the main Walgan Road, wasn't discovered until those slips happened. So it wasn't after the bushfires. It was this catastrophic fault was not discovered until the rains had finished. and they still haven't finished. But those major slips discovered those faults, the catastrophic fault that has caused it to be closed, most probably permanently. You know, and these are things that we've got to deal with, but we can't afford to be throwing away $48,000. I think someone mentioned there was 48 cars down there.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Denmead, not to speak from the gallery, thank you.
But yeah, so I kind of, I like the motion, but I can't support the amendment for the full.
Thank you, Councillor McGee. Anyone else wishing to speak? Right of reply for the amendment, Councillor Leslie.
Excuse me, Mayor Statham, can we see the amendment?
It's coming up.
Oh.
While we're waiting, Mayor Statham, how many cars have to come up from the valley?
37, I think, isn't it? The amendment now is on the screen for councillors to look at.
Would this include the staff down the Emirates? There's a lot of young people that come there with their cars and got jobs down there. Are their cars? I know I got some gear trapped down in the Emirates myself since I finished. So I'm just wondering if there's young people down there that can't get their cars out. If anybody has checked.
Mayor
Councillors?
Statham, can I just ask a question?
Yes, certainly.
So, with the inclusion of Councillor Leslie's amendment, does that take the dot points to 5? So it's adding to mine, or is it replacing?
Yes. So,
Thank you.
so
It was
would you-
mentioned point 2.
So would you be accepting of that, Councillor Goodsell, on your motion? If Councillor Goodsell accepts this, Councillor Leslie, are you happy with that? Your point that you've added?
Can we just get clarification? So, Councillor Goodsell's note, the appointment of, is there point 2? So you want your point 2 to replace her point 2, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So point 3 then still would read, approve a single $300 subsidy per vehicle.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be dot point 3.
The reason of the numbers is that I was working off the recommendation that's on the paper, and I've amended, my amendment is to change the recommendation that is currently on the paper on page 27, and if I could get the recommendation.
Yes, that's right. Yes, that's right.
So I'll read my. So this is to replace the item that is dealing with the single $300 subsidy per vehicle, and I'm moving that would now read that the application be amended to include the cost of recovery of vehicles in the Walgan Valley in any funding agreements reached. Basically, the council is trying to get money from other sources, and I'm leaving it open as to where those sources come from. If, however, that agreement is not reached by those funding sources, then, I continue, if the council is unable to convince the state government of the equity, or I'm happy to change that to those funding sources of this equity in this, then the cost of the recovery of these vehicles be borne by the council.
Councillor Goodsell, are you happy to have that? So your amendment then, so the amendment then will become the motion. You're happy with that? All right, you're happy with that, Councillor Leslie?
It would become part of the motion.
Yes, that's correct.
I'm happy with
Yes.
that.
All right. I'll put the, so that's going to go into the motion. Councillor Goodsell, right of reply. Thank you.
I think that's fair and reasonable. That's something that I didn't get to, was addressing a $300 subsidy for something that isn't the community's fault. And I'd just like to again thank the Wolgan Valley Association for their tireless work, their hard work, and I'd also like to congratulate our staff for doing what they've done to construct an access that's suitable at the moment and hopefully improved in time, really soon time.
All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. We'll start now on page 5. Item 9.1, Notice of Motion, Councillor Leslie and Councillor Coleman, Great Western Highway Upgrade, Hartley Valley. Councillor Leslie?
Yes, thank you. I was just rearranging my own papers. Lithgow Council's General Manager has unilaterally altered the notice of motion submitted by Councillor Coleman and myself. This cannot have been an accident, as I had forwarded to him an electronic copy of the motion. The recommendation as printed in the business paper is meaningless. For example, that the money be allocated. What money? It's not clear. He also chose to add an undated attachment, giving the misleading impression that we, Councillor Coleman and myself, agreed with the thrust and direction of this report. We don't. And we would appreciate it if the General Manager could in future refrain from interfering in our notices of motion. So I will move the motion that was submitted, namely, that Lithgow Council, and this is my motion, that Lithgow Council calls on the New South Wales State Government and our local state member, Deputy Premier Paul Toole, to abandon the proposed upgrade of the Great Western Highway through the Hartley Valley and to allocate the money so saved, estimated at $2,500 million, for flood relief in the Central West. The money to be allocated on a needs basis to councils in the Central West, including Lithgow City Council, for flood damaged repair to roads, drains, levee banks and council-owned assets. You'll note that would also include the Wolgan Road. It's a flood damaged structure and it's within the area that I'm recommending that the money to be allocated from the Great Western Highway should be done. The reason I don't agree with the construction of the upgrade of the highway through the Hartley Valley is that it fails the cost-benefit analysis. This upgrade will cost $2.5 billion. But let's put that in figures that we can better visualise. That is $2,500 million. And remember that $2,500 million is specifically for the Hartley Valley section. This highway upgrade is ostensibly designed to help the Central West connect with Sydney. It doesn't. It does not include any tunnels bypassing Medlow Bath, Blackheath or Mount Victoria, and anyone and everyone knows where the pinch points are. And there's no guarantee that those tunnels will ever be built. It does not include any highway construction between Lithgow and Forbes or around any of the flood-impacted towns and cities to our west. The few minutes saved in travelling across the Hartley Valley is not cost-effective for the expenditure of $2,500 million. The General Manager, in his comments, makes great play of the money being allocated to Lithgow from the government. Let me just demonstrate how pitiful these allocations are. There is reference to the $8 million for the natural disaster relief and recovery arrangements, and which, as a city, Lithgow, recovering from our natural disasters, should be entitled to. If the money from the highway upgrade was used, we could get this $8 million every year for the next 312 years. Let's take the $315,257 for pothole repairs. You'll recall that some councillors went into a lather of excitement when this was reported to the council meeting late last year. If the money from that upgrade was used, we could keep getting this $315,257 for the next 7,900 years. The councils and the people of the Central West, including our local government area residents, such as the residents of Enfield Avenue, Cuprow Street, Main Street, the Vale of Clwyd, and everyone else affected by flooding, need to be treated with respect and given the support they need. We've just heard in both the public forum and in the debate just how hard and how difficult it is for the people of the Walgan Valley. That road is flood affected. It falls directly in to this motion. We'd be dealt with on a needs basis, and we need to respect and honour the fact that they need help and we have to do it. The decision is simple. Just apply a cost-benefit analysis to the program. 1 minute, a few minutes, saving time versus life-changing help for those in desperate need.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. In the Western Advocate, dated October 18th, 2022, Bathurst Regional Councillor Warren Orban stated that he had driven from Bathurst to Dubbo. It was the worst driving experience he had ever had. He stated there are so many potholes, it is so dangerous, you have cars and trucks going on the wrong side of the road. The past few weeks I have travelled from Portland to Parkes, then headed east from Portland to Katoomba. On the weekend I drove down Banners Lane in Little Hartley. It has been challenging and often concerning. The main concerns for me are the roads from Portland through Wellerawang into Lithgow. Infrastructure Australia have stated in their business case evaluation summary in regards to the Great Western Highway that there are significant risks that the project could be delayed or exceed budget. The tunnel has not been approved and may not be. It may fail environmental assessments and most importantly, it has no federal funding allocated to it and cannot proceed without it. The ratepayers of Lithgow will also have to fund the maintenance through the valley, which is between 8 to 11 kilometres of road. As I said previously, the state election is fast approaching. The money from the state government allocated to the upgrade, which will only save motorists 2 to 6 minutes in travelling time, would be better spent on improving basic infrastructure, investing in our regional road networks, not only across our local government area, but also for the Central West neighbours who have had a terrible time. The other point I'd like to make is that we need to start talking about an upgrade of Bells Line of Road, or the Bells Expressway as it once was said. This is something that we should be advocating for as well.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against this? Councillor Goodsell.
Sure. My understanding was that they are upgrading. There was a recent announcement about the Bellsliner Road that they are upgrading it. Anyway, that's for another time. I think Lithgow City Council has worked productively and successfully with the state and federal governments to secure natural disaster funding. The government also are demonstrating an ongoing commitment into the future. I do not believe it is my role as a councillor to reallocate state government funds nor identify priority projects. My role is to work alongside Council and Transport for New South Wales to get the best possible outcome in relation to their project for our community. For example, the detailed submission councillors had input into, which was resolved in March 2022. I have concerns with asking for a state government project which is well underway to be halted after 8 out of 9 councillors endorsed it in March 2022. And don't often add personal experience, but having been involved in a fatal car accident with irreversible consequences on mine and many others' lives, where the road safety was inadequate, then significantly upgraded, I find great comfort knowing this will never happen to anyone else, and I would feel for any single person who has suffered as a result of injury or death in an accident on this inadequate stretch of Great Western Highway. And their concerns go unheard if we do this today. Wherever they may live, not in our local government area, the bigger picture, there is no amount of money nor cost-benefit scenario that can replace a life, so I can't support this notice of motion.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Marnie?
In regard to the Great Western Highway, I remain unconvinced about the cost-benefit analysis, and I don't disagree with some of the comments Councillor Leslie's made in regard to that. Priorities change, and I don't see my role as a councillor bringing priorities forward, representing views of the community on what should be priorities for our local area. So I don't have a problem with that. I got invited out to a meeting during the Christmas break, and the person who invited me suggested I drive in a certain direction to arrive to the meeting from Bridle to Hampton, which is an important link road, secondary road leading the community onto this Great Western Highway. I understand, and it's not a criticism of staff, the work that's sitting out there in front of us is significant, but I could only best describe that road as unsafe and certainly not fit for purpose. Those roads, and again we go back to the fact that there's consequences of what's happening in our climate cycles. Whether people are comfortable saying certain C words in public, that's up to them. I'll leave that to their decision. But there's economic, social and environmental consequences of this. What we're now seeing across the region is that we have much infrastructure that is no longer fit for purpose, isn't fit for the future because it's no longer fit for current purpose. We need to be agile and adaptable in how we spend our money. And at this stage, I believe the greatest challenge to this region is recovering from floods and improving the functionality of much of our infrastructure. I'm happy, we've talked about the Walgam Road as a prime example, Hampton to Rydal, access into Glen Davis. We're finding lots of our tourism industry of the Seven Valleys becoming the Severed Valleys when we have rain events. We're unable to get people out on longer term. We're unable to get people out on shorter terms. So I also look at Western Main Street, a state-managed road which has 3 significant constriction points, and I applaud the staff for their work on addressing these in a logical and sequential way. But those run risks to business. They run risks to business who operate food businesses, having floods that are full of local sewage.
Councillor Marnie, please keep on track.
I'm completely on track. Thank you, Mayor Statham, for reminding me, but I'm completely on track. I'm talking about reallocation of funds to deal with flood-affected lands. The fact that another business lost most of its stock through preventable, or at least preventable mitigation actions that we could take to reduce the risk. This is what I'm looking at in this motion, and I look at it from a very, I think, a fairly neutral and looking at it from a fairly analytical approach is that we have to bear the economic, the social and environmental consequences, I'm going to say the C word in public, of climate change. Now, if people aren't comfortable with that, I'll leave that with them. But this is the economic reality. Large areas of rural Central West are now being impacted by extreme weather, and there are costs to be borne. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor McGee?
Yes, I would call this looking a gift horse in the mouth. I think it's an imperative part of the future of Lithgow and the Western New South Wales area. And to that end, I think that I'd like to propose an amendment that reinforces Council's existing position on it, and that we actually write or contact the state and federal government and thank them for all of their assistance to date, specifically the Walgan and Capity valleys, all of their assistance there. And perhaps even raise, just to reiterate the minor concerns that Council did have with the highway upgrade, just to go through the things again. And, but basically to thank them for all of their help so far, it's definitely the way forward for Lithgow and for Western New South Wales in general. Everyone needs this. It is very important, and it's not a few minutes that we're talking about. It's an absolute safety issue. There was another young life lost at the Oberon turn-off recently, and another one at the bottom of Vic Pass, and those both fall squarely into the upgrade area. So I would like the amendment to, it can be a bit shorter than that, but I would like to put the amendment that we contact the state and federal government, thanking them for their assistance so far to date, specifically in the Walgan and Capity valleys, and just raise the issues, or to reiterate the issues that we have raised recently.
Point of order, Mayor. That's a direct negative of the motion and would be illegal.
Can you just say that? Because I don't understand what this was.
Can't do it? No.
Councillor McGee, you're unable to move the direct opposite of the current motion.
Cool.
So I'm unable to accept that. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Are there any more? Councillor Goodwin.
Mayor Statham, there's an election coming up, and make no bones about it, this motion is a political grandstand. State and federal politics should be taken out of local government. Safety of the road is paramount. I've been to 2 major accidents down there in December. One was a fatal accident, one was a very serious traumatic accident, and I've been to numerous minor accidents on Rivulet Hill. A road upgrade in this area is urgent. I can't support his notice of motion.
Thank you, Councillor Goodwin. Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Bryce?
Yeah, I can't support the motion. I think the fact that we have lost a life there in December and had several accidents in that time period, how many more lives are we going to lose? We've opened up Genolan Caves. That road now becomes more and more tourists going into there on a Sunday afternoon to try and merge out. That is where the issue is, and that's what caused that accident. As a direct person who suffered through an accident and the loss of a loved one, I cannot support any more deaths on that road.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Right of reply, Councillor Leslie. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Statham. I am uncomfortable about replying to the emotional blackmail here, but it is a fact that fatal car accidents occur on all roads, including poorly maintained local roads. But I think we need to be serious about this crisis and consider the genuine needs of all our citizens, and we have the opportunity to be compassionate to our fellow citizens. In time of crisis, we need to help those in trouble. The people out in our towns to our west, the people in the Walgan Valley, people who are suffering because of their own roads, their own infrastructure being so badly damaged that we need in these times to help those in trouble. It's the honourable way, the civilised way, it's the Australian way. And I recommend the motion, the original motion, the unaltered motion.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. I'll put the motion. All those in favour of Councillor Leslie's motion, say aye. Against? Thank you. I'll call the division. Thank you. All those in favour of Councillor Leslie's motion, Councillor Marnie, Councillor Leslie, Councillor Coleman. All those against, Councillor Bryce, Councillor Goodsell, Councillor Goodwin, Councillor McGee and Councillor Statham. Thank you. Councillor Bryce, would you ask Councillor O'Connor to come back in the room? Thank you.
Just quickly, I'm not feeling too good. I'm quite ill, actually. I feel quite ill, so
Oh,
I'm going to go. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. All right. Councillor Bryce will be excused. Thank you. (10.1) Question with notice. Councillor Marnie, access to contaminated lands registers. Could I have somebody move that, please? Councillor Marnie? Yes. Could I have a seconder? Thank you.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman.
I'm not sure if I need to move a procedural motion, so I'll take advice on this. Just, can I open this one up to debate?
Question with notice.
Just looking to just give a bit of additional information. I don't want to go into specific cases, but just a bit of additional background.
Mayor Statham, I thought the
Yes.
point of a question with notice was asked and answered. If you notice a motion is different, it's debated.
That's
Not
just what
trying
I
to
said.
kill the conversation.
No,
but we've got to have
that's
some
just what
sort
I
of
said to
rules.
the General Manager, Councillor.
A question on notice doesn't need a seconder, by the way. Just thought I'd add that.
No, it doesn't. Thank you. So thank you, Councillor Marnie. Could somebody please give a report on this?
Right.
No. Michael?
Okay.
Mr. McGrath,
Yeah,
thank
I'd
you.
like to read the question first, if I can, and then I'm happy to receive an answer.
Thank you,
okay.
Councillor Marnie.
Okay, just a background or commentary. A significant challenge for the provision of much needed housing for our community is the availability of land suitable for the construction of residential dwellings. This challenge is significantly complicated on the sites either adjacent to or within areas of historic heavy industrial activity, coal mining or other. These sites can come with inherent risks of legacy issues relating to the contamination of the site. This provides a significant challenge to the development of these lands for residential dwellings, both at an individual or subdivision scale. So the question I'm asking, and I've put it with notice to give staff an opportunity to develop the response, is noting the development of Lithgow City Council's contaminated land policy in 2021, can advice be provided to the council addressing the processes currently used by council to bring this very important and consequential information to the attention of individuals or developers during the early stages of their development applications, in order to avoid unnecessary and at times significant costs for a development that may, once consideration is given to the extent of contamination, may make the development costs prohibitive to proceed with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Mr. McGrath, thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Statham. The management comment sets out where council is at in terms of developing and refining its contaminated land policy. This is something that's still live, I must admit. But the dot points at the bottom of page 7, I'd be inclined to change the order of those. I'm sorry that didn't happen, but the most important piece of information is the planning certificate that becomes part of the any change of land or land use. So I'm looking at a planning circular that was published by the Department of Planning on the 2nd of December 2021. You might have seen that already, Councillor. And it basically talks about what's contained in planning certificates. They used to be the old 149 certificate. Now they're the 10.7, section 10.7 in the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. So it goes through in quite a lot of detail, and I can send this out to councillors tomorrow for their further information. It talks about what the different types of contamination are that can be imposed on a piece of land. But when somebody does go to buy a piece of land from somebody else or to develop a piece of land, then the number one document, the go-to document, is the 10.7. So that's for starters. But the policy, the contaminated land policy, is still a live document. We're trying to refine it. We're talking to experts in this area to try and make sure that we've identified all the potential sites in our LGA, given the information we have. But there's other considerations too. We don't want to overcook this. We don't want to have situations where perhaps a rural property might have had some farm chemicals on it, and thereby that excludes development on the entire property. So we have to be a little bit circumspect about what's put into the actual appendix. So and then contacting council would be, the final sort of insurance for somebody who wants to look at changing the land use or developing their land, to contact council officers and get them to help them through this process of developing or changing the land use. But I will send out this planning circular to councillors tomorrow. I'm sorry it wasn't attached to this response in the business paper.
Thank you, Mr McGrath. You're happy with that, Councillor Marnie?
Yeah, I appreciate the
All right,
staff's
thank you.
response. Thank you.
11.1, General Manager's Report, Central West Joint Organisation Membership. Thank you, Mr General Manager. Can I have somebody move this, please? Councillor Goodsell, have a seconder, thank you. Councillor O'Connor. Thank you. Councillor Goodsell, would you like to speak to this?
Yep. Thank you. I'm sceptical of this report, and sceptical because I've been a councillor when we were part of Centroc, and then when we left Centroc to join Westrock as the general manager at that time, thought we would benefit with a close relationship with Western Sydney, and I still fail to see what we've received out of our $200,000 over the last 4 years with Westrock. I understand the key priorities of the newly named Central New South Wales Joint Organisation align with Lithgow City Council's needs going forward, being bulk cost savings, tourism, land use, planning, health, telecommunications, housing, transport and water. And I just have a couple of questions, through you, Mayor, to the General Manager. If you could explain the cost versus benefit for this one, please. $90,000 is a lot of money annually. Financially, how will we get our money's worth?
Mr General Manager, thank you.
The report speaks to the various activities that the joint organisation is involved in, their strategic priorities. I believe there's a good degree of alignment. I believe this is a city that looks both ways, but the stronger affiliations are with the Central West. Already there has been considerable involvement in kind with the joint organisation in matters such as procurement in our roads and transport area, the water and wastewater area and the like, net waste and the like. We'd like in the future to try and coalesce our waste contracts to come into alignment with net waste, which is more in this region. The economic development and tourism, I think our tourism also is a stronger brand in the Central West than the competition with the World Heritage Blue Mountains area. So yes, so the choices are either to collaborate or not collaborate, and I believe there's a real value. It needs to be recognised that it is an additional cost to Westrock, but there are products in this joint organisation that aren't in the Westrock offer. Westrock the councils don't do waste management, they don't do water, they don't do wastewater and the like. So it's my recommendation that there is a real power in collaboration, particularly in advocacy. I note that the joint organisation meets twice a year, 4 times a year, sorry. 2 of those meetings, one is in Canberra and one is in New South Wales, whereas a group and a city it's difficult to advocate just on your own, but if you're advocating as an affiliation or alliance of councils on areas of common interest, there's more opportunity to cut through. So I'm very comfortable with the benefit return. I think the joint organisation was also honest when they briefed the council. They themselves said this isn't pure, this isn't gold standard. They have to operate in the rules of a joint organisation, but there's a great collaboration being shown amongst these councils, and I think they're one of the standout joint organisations in the state.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager.
If we were to just say have the associate membership, which is only $67,000, we get the full rights to the group, except for voting. So is that something we could consider? And also, is this budgeted for in our budget through you, Mayor, to Mr. Gurney? Do we have allowances for this in our budget, or what's going to be cut to allow us to spend it?
Mr. Gurney.
Through you, Madam Mayor, there is sufficient budget for the rest of this financial year, which is only a pro rata amount, but we would need to include the full amount in the budget to be put to council for public exhibition in April.
Thank you. And then I would just like to then, I don't know if I'd...
The arrangement, the associate membership is only a stepping stone. To join the joint organisation requires a proclamation from the government. That's a process that needs to be moved through. So the offer is to join as an associate, so that we've got more active membership. If council takes this decision tonight until such time as that proclamation, and then the offer is to join as a full member. And as was debated on the last occasion, the associate was only a stepping stone to full membership, and I'm not recommending that council participate in an inferior fashion to the other councils around the table going forward. I think if that's the case, we're better off not joining.
I'm very happy to support it, and I note dot point 2 that was part of. I'd really like the regular reports and briefings that will be provided to council in relation to the activities and outcomes. That's really important.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm very supportive of this, and if it can be used that when, say, we're buying plant and equipment, that it get a giant thing going together, because the more you buy, the cheaper they are. You get your money back in very little time. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this? Right of reply, Councillor Goodsell? No, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous. Thank you. 11.1.2.
I'd like to move this, please.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Have a seconder, thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. It greatly concerns me that after reading the report, that some risk remains in regards to the Lithgow community could suffer a loss of a reduction of specialist medical services provided by the Lithgow Community Private Hospital. Further down in the report on bottom page 11, the report mentions, like all medical services, the operation of Lithgow Community Private was profoundly affected by the pandemic. The same is the case for the Lithgow Hospital, which is no doubt is under immediate stress because of COVID-19. The whole public health service system is actually under enormous stress at the moment. Lithgow Community Private has made a formal request to the New South Wales State Government for a relatively small amount of funding to partially restore losses from the pandemic and replace a lung function machine. However, this request has not been granted yet. I note that $415,000 was announced today for Lithgow's Blast Furnace Park, which is a great investment to support the cultural sector. But we still need to advocate for health services, considering that our local population consists of 1 in 4 over the age of 65. Investing in our local health service has to be an absolute priority. So I am putting to the council that we definitely need to advocate to the New South Wales government for a secure, long-term and viable working arrangement for the Lithgow Community Private with Nepean Blue Mountains Local Health District. Our residents cannot afford to lose a health service.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Goodsell.
I could only back Councillor Coleman up on this one. I've also found this report very disappointing and disturbing that the parties have not yet reached an agreement to keep our current health services and continue to provide them into the future. Why is it taking so long, with the risk of reduced services hanging over our community and over Lithgow Community Private? It states in the report that Lithgow Community Private are committed to expanding their services. I don't know if anyone can answer the question, but what are the key issues that are still to be resolved? And as far as the recommendation goes, I don't think it's specific enough. What, who and how often are we advocating to, can I ask? So if Councillor Coleman will allow, I'd like to add a dot point 2 and 3. Yep. So dot point 2, that a report come back so we know who, what, why, who we're advocating to and how often. I'd like to see a report come back to every second council meeting with an update regarding negotiations between Lithgow Community Private and Nepean Blue Mountains Health and the representations that Lithgow City Council has made in relation to this advocacy.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell.
And dot point 3.
I'm happy to accept that.
Thank you, Councillor
And
Coleman.
dot point 3, that the community also be updated bi-monthly by way of media release.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Anybody else wishing to speak to this? Councillor Marnie?
I just missed that. Just to reiterate what Councillor Coleman and Councillor Goodsell said, I agree completely with what was put forward. I read the report and I read about goodwill and hope. This has to be a much more clearer, direct and deliberate action to resolve this matter. I'm unclear why a resolution of a significant organisation has taken this long to arrive at. There is a clear pathway. As far as I'm concerned, there needs to be a decision from the State Government Health to determine what their arrangements are going to be. We're at times disadvantaged by our small population centre located where we are. It's quite common for us with members of our families and our friends that will drive them one of two directions. We'll either drive them to Bathurst or Orange, or we'll drive them to Nepean for treatment. We tend to be in a bit of an overlap space, and we have travelled backwards and forwards in the health districts. I think we need to think about how we're managing the health of small communities, particularly communities under 20,000, and we need to get more certainty around those services. We won't have all the complexity of the services in Nepean, but we need to feel confident that specialists will travel to us. As Councillor Coleman stated, there's a large cohort of people in our population. Their ability to transport themselves across the landscape is difficult, and we've also got people of low socio-economic backgrounds that are also disadvantaged in trying to travel across the landscapes. I won't go into personal things for myself, but I'm sure I'd be surprised if many of the councillors around the room haven't stepped in to help friends or family travel to these outlying areas to get the services they require.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Coleman, right of reply. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous. Thank you. People and Services Report 11.2.1, Building and Development. Could I have somebody move this report? Thank you.
I'm happy to move.
Oh, you go.
I'm not sure who that was. Have a second. Councillor Woodsell, will you second that then? Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. I'm happy with the recommendation as it is. I have no issues with that. But I note that the proposed voluntary planning agreement is for contributions towards community projects and or considering activities. All that I ask for is I hope that Portland is given a priority when funding is allocated, considering that this particular development is for New York technology and it's
It's the wrong one, Councillor Coleman.
Have I got the wrong one? Oh, sorry.
So
I'm still happy to move it. I'm just happy with the report. I'll just go with that.
That was me.
So, Councillor Goodsell.
I'm happy to approve it. It's just the moving of a retention basin off a development application onto council land, and that's the only reason it's before us, I believe.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Marnie.
Thank you. Not opposing it, but just being aware of that when we do discharge into council-owned lands from developments, some of that long-term maintenance cost is transferred to the council, not in a obvious form, but having worked within stormwater management for many years, we've got to be cognizant of what is put in between the development. Use of biofilters as well as detention systems are critical, and I just, as a I should put it, as a principle of taking the public interest, I just ask that be a key point of concern with this development. I don't see it in any way stopping the development, but just aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Councillor O'Connor.
Yes, Mayor. The other thing I want to say about all these semi-rural subdivisions, they all put a 1 or a 2 coat seal down. Anybody in town doing anything, and you put down 40 mil of hot mix, all these roads will break up in a few years, and they should be every one of them hot mixed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Anybody else wishing to speak? I'll put the motion. I'll write a reply, Councillor Coleman. No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Call a division. All those in favour say aye. Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Goodsell, Councillor Goodwin, Councillor Marnie, Councillor McGee, Councillor Leslie, Councillor Coleman, Councillor Statham. Thank you. 11.2.1.2, Voluntary Planning Agreement.
I'll move this one. This is what I wanted
Happy to second, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Councillor Coleman.
Sorry, well, it's like Groundhog Day. Sorry about that. I'm happy with the recommendation, and in regards to New Rock Technology, which is a manufacturing plant created recycled fly ash, that's great, and it's actually close to the power station in Portland. All that I hope for is I note that the proposed VPA is for contributions towards community projects and activities. All that I hope for is that Portland is given a priority when the funding is allocated.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Goodsell.
I've asked this question a couple of times in the past few years. Why is there no consistency in the VPA language in the business paper? So the previous DA states the VPA is to go towards public infrastructure, and in this item, VPA states it goes to community projects and or activities. Is there not a consistent term that the language be the same on VPA that's going to community infrastructure?
Mr McGrath, thank you.
Through you, Mayor Statham, I'd have to take that on notice, if you wouldn't mind. I'd need to look into there may be other situations where the language doesn't match up as well, and I think a consistent approach is definitely what we're looking for.
yeah, sometimes it says open spaces, sometimes it says community spaces, sometimes, yeah, anyway, or projects and activities. And also, can a developer choose whether to pay a VPA or a Section 94A if the development's over 200,000? Why would they go for a VPA if it's significantly more?
I'll try and answer that one too, Mayor Statham. A VPA is just what it says. It's voluntary. So if a developer wants to actually contribute greater to the or more to the community, then we won't stand in their way, of course. But they don't have to, and we can't influence exactly how much they offer. We can only engage in discussions with them. The Section 94, or it's now called 712, contributions are mandated, if you like, but not voluntary planning agreements.
Thank you, Mr McGrath. Councillor Goodsell, are you finished? Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak on this? Councillor Coleman, right of reply. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous, thank you.
That requires a division also.
Yeah, a division, thank you. Councillor Coleman, Councillor Leslie, Councillor McGee, Councillor Marnie, Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Goodsell, Councillor Goodwin and Councillor Statham. 11.2.1.3 Variations to development standards under clause 4.6 of the standard instrument. Could I have somebody move this, please? Councillor O'Connor? The seconder?
Happy to.
I think Councillor Marnie might have been first. Councillor O'Connor, would you like to speak to that?
Yes. It looks very similar to one we approved last year, nearly exactly the same in a council meeting. Very similar anyway for if you want to do a bit of change the plan slightly or anything like that, it makes it a bit easier. So it has to be good.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Marnie. Anybody else wishing to speak? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. There is a division. Councillor Coleman, Councillor Leslie, Councillor McGee, Councillor Marnie, Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Goodsell, Councillor Goodwin and Councillor Statham. Thank you.
Just for clarity, Mayor Statham, the recommendation didn't actually require a division. Are you calling one in your own right?
No, I'm not. But anyway, it's not a bad thing to do that anyway. I'm sorry, but yes, it's not. 11.2.2 People and Services General Reports, Lithgow Community Cultural Protocol. Councillor Marnie?
Happy.
Seconder? Thank you. Councillor Goodsell? Councillor Marnie?
Firstly, thank you for the work that's been put into this, and we have had a couple of briefs on it, and I appreciate there's some very important community consultation that went on with it. I've probably just got a couple of statements or questions. I'm just wondering with the title, I find the title a little bit ambiguous. I showed it to 3 different people and asked them what they thought it meant. One thought it was to do with the arts, and another person was thinking it might be something to do with diversity. And I feel that we need to be more explicit, whether it's a First Nations cultural protocol, but we're quite explicit what it is. That's my only comment. In regard to the submissions, I thought submission 3 had some validity in that it looked for an opportunity to make a statement about the age of the culture of the Wiradjuri people, and I felt in the section which was the section on Aboriginal history, as it's titled, which spoke to the geographic scale of the Wiradjuri people and the origins of their name, there was an opportunity maybe to say a little bit more there. That's just a comment. And I appreciate, and I know this is a very complex issue, and I'm not in any way putting myself forward as any sort of expert on this, but realising that the Megalong Valley is seen by some of the Gundungurra people as being part of the Gundungurra nation, and what happens with the Wallangambi and the eastern edge. So I appreciate that that's been captured in that submission. That was also, someone spoke to me about that issue as well. So I just congratulate the council on their work on this. I'm not sure what you do with the appendix and or the context, whether that becomes an appendix to keep its currency, but other than that, I thank you for the work that the staff did on it.
Councillor Goodsell?
No, there was a few brief minor amendments. It's okay.
Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Coleman?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Statham. Look, it was brought to my attention, I had representation in regards to this, in regards to submission 1. It states that in submission 1 that I believe it would be better to not name one particular group, as this can cause distress to those excluded in that acknowledgement. Either that or name all groups. Lithgow local government area is generally accepted to have been home to mainly Wiradjuri and the Gunnedarra tribal groups. The reason I raise this is because in the amendment here, in your acknowledgement, when at the beginning of council meetings and meetings, it's my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that you will now be saying Lithgow City Council acknowledges Wiradjuri elders past and present of the Wiradjuri Nation and original custodians of the land on which Lithgow community resides. The council also extends our respects to the neighbouring nations. So Gunnedarra, I think that's how you say it, and please forgive me if I'm saying that incorrect, is no longer included in that acknowledgement. And it's been raised with me, we either do all or none. And the reason it was raised with me is that in the Lithgow Council's own commission migration history, which was done in 2014 by Ray Christian and Naomi Parry, it clearly states in the intro, the valley and the ridges are places where the lands of the Gunnedarra people meet of the Wiradjuri Lithgow in the place of junctions and meetings. So I'm just wondering if I can get some clarification on that aspect through you, Mayor, through to whoever the director is responsible for it.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Mr McGrath, thank you.
Yes, thanks. Through you, Mayor Statham. So the section that's highlighted in the report in orange, that change was made in the introduction of the protocol, but further in the document itself, there's a suggested example of an acknowledgement by council officers and elected members, and it does include a reference to Gundungurra and Darug nations as well. So that's in there, but I guess I have to point out that the information to do with the acknowledgement and the welcomes, for that matter, we source that information from the experts in our area, which is the Bathurst Aboriginal Land Council. So a fair bit of backwards and forwards and consultation with that organisation has occurred to arrive at this final wording. So we're not the experts, we acknowledge that, but the Bathurst Local Aboriginal Land Council are the nominated experts in this field, so that's where we've gathered the information.
Thank you, Mr McGrath. Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Anybody else wishing to speak? Right of reply? No, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, unanimous. 11.3 Infrastructure Services Report. Road naming proposal DA 196/18 Woodlands Estate, Lidsdale.
I'll move this, Mayor Statham. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie.
Happy to second.
Just
Thank
like
you, Councillor
to congratulate the naming. It's nice to get two street names that actually relate to the history of the site. It's far better than the wholly inappropriate names we've had in the past, such as Heritage Place in a modern building and Trench Close, which has got nothing to do with the gunning place was next door.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Councillor Marnie.
I actually didn't talk to Councillor Leslie about this, but I have exactly the same view as Councillor Leslie. So it's good to see developers capturing that local history, which is great. So good work to them and also the staff on that.
Councillor Marnie, anyone else wishing to speak for or against? Right of reply, Councillor Leslie? No, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous, thank you. 11.3.2, Walgan Road recovery. Oh, we've done this, sorry. It's been dealt with.
Thank you,
11.3.3, replacement of street sweeper. Could I have somebody move this?
Yeah, Abby, take it on. I'll
Sorry,
second it.
Councillor O'Connor. Have a seconder, thank you. Councillor Marnie. Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you. I'm happy to see go with the recommendation. Isuzu truck suits what was there before, so they know how to drive it.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Marnie.
Also, thank the staff for their report and the proposal to replace this plant, accepting some of the comments Councillor O'Connor made in an earlier issue about vendor panel and using our bigger procurement systems and things like that, which is great. Look, it is an expensive piece of plant. I know that the people who are residing in the eastern end of Lithgow appreciated the street sweeper coming out the day after and making a bit of sense of the mess that had been made the night before. So, and also just for the maintenance of stormwater pits, and again, that's very much appreciated because they can often lead to localised flooding. So, I think as we go forward, we need to review our plant, make sure that our plant is operational. We're not paying for leases of plant while we wait for parts and things like that. So I applaud the staff on this report and the action.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Anybody else wishing to speak on this? No? Right of reply, Councillor O'Connor.
Oh, thank you.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous, thank you. 11.4, water and wastewater reports. Could I have somebody move this, please?
Happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Have a seconder, thank you. Councillor Goodwin.
That's not water and wastewater. We're in the waste management strategy. That I haven't got that wrong.
Yes, Waste Management and Resource Recovery Strategy 2022 to 2026. Thank you, Councillor Goodsell.
Thank you. This is a 4-year document, has been on public exhibition with only 6 submissions. I think it's an outstanding strategy which focuses on high-level waste hierarchy, identifying the key challenges for our waste management and resource recovery in Lithgow, in line with the standards set out by the state government. I'm excited to see the resource recovery will be up and running soon, and following that the community recycling centre. Thoroughly pleased also with the introduction of FOGO, which will start to commence in the 2023-24 financial year. It's important to me to note there is actually no actions in our strategy for the introduction of energy to waste, only an acknowledgement of the state waste and sustainable materials strategy. I just think there's so much to celebrate in this document. Fascinating, insightful, well worth a read for those interested in our waste plans for the future. And it's amazing to see we currently only recycle 10 to 20% with 2 bins. And I look forward to the day, and it'll be near, that the community, as a community, we recycle 60 to 80% with 3 bins, including the FOGO. I also didn't know there was an app for Lithgow City Council waste. It gives you reminders and alerts about bulky green waste and bulky collection dates. It was great.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Councillor Goodwin.
No, I don't wish to speak.
Anybody else wishing to speak to this? Councillor Coleman.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Statham. I noted a report that the only basis for referencing energy from waste within Lithgow Council strategy is to align the strategy with the New South Wales Waste and Sustainable Materials Strategy. I think I got that right. I understand that local government is an arm of the state government. However, we can choose to align or not. And considering on the top of the page 31, residents raised issues regarding energy to waste, As a council, we have a choice to represent the views of the New South Wales Government or of our community. However, I'll leave it there. I do have a question. Has the council considered using our local landfills for methane capture?
Mr Trapp.
Through you, Mayor Statham. So the methane capture process, it would be a consideration, but usually only at the closure of a landfill. So once it gets to the end of its useful life and you've run out of airspace. At this point in time, Lithgow landfill still has quite a bit of life left in it as a commercial operation. So we haven't looked into it any further than it's a potential down the road. But as far as this strategy goes, and in the 4 years that this would operate, it's not been placed in there.
Can I have a follow-up question, Mayor Statham, please?
Yes, certainly.
What about Luwerawang? Is that an option? Because since that's closing?
I would have to take that one on notice. Yep.
Coleman, and thank you, Mr Trapp. Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Goodsell, right of reply. Thank you.
No, I'll put my hand up.
Councillor Marnie.
Look, the terrific strategy and very forward-thinking in many elements. Like other councils, I'm very excited about the FOGO option and taking that large percentage of stuff going to landfill currently that could be actually going into green waste recycling. There's private sector businesses don't enter into this because there's no money to be made out of it. There's considerable economic possibilities for production of horticultural products. So I'm very much looking for that. I note the increase in income in recycled products that was reported recently, and that excites me, as I share Councillor Goodsell's excitement about the Resource Recovery Centre, and I am someone that uses a lot of second-hand material in all the things I do, and I'm really excited that we give the community an opportunity to recover that material before it goes to landfill. So there is little that I'm not excited about, but unfortunately it's a very rare occasion I'll feel so strongly about a strategy that I won't actually vote for it. And I'm afraid, whilst the energy from waste and the lack of clarification about the West Lithgow precinct, I've looked at the EPA site, it offers me no certainty about that issue. Its inclusion in this strategy, unfortunately, I can't provide support for the overall strategy, but I congratulate the staff, and I congratulate the staff you brought into the organisation for the work, every single other bit of work in this strategy, because it's an exceptionally high quality strategy. So my apologies, but I'm unable to support this strategy with the inclusion of that.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Councillor Leslie.
Thank you, Ms. Statham. I also intend to vote against this. The statement at the bottom, page 31, under the New South Wales Strategy, energy recovery is part of the circular economy model. It's a blunt statement. I disagree with it. I don't think it's true. And if it is true, the downside and the unintended consequences of it far exceed any value. So I can't support any waste strategy report that does not include the sentence, Lithgow Council opposes the New South Wales Government's Energy from Waste Infrastructure Plan. And I remind the Council that Lithgow Council carried a motion to oppose the New South Wales Government's Energy from Waste Infrastructure Plan in September 2021. I remind the Council and the viewing public that the motion was carried with the support of Councillor Coleman, myself and yourself, Madam Mayor. And we all know that as soon as the council election was over, you changed your position and supported the burning of Sydney's waste in our area. That motion stated a policy position for this council, and in my view, it was illegal for the General Manager to put forward a report changing that policy position.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Goodsell, right of reply. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? Councillor Marnie, Councillor Goodwin, Councillor Leslie and Councillor Coleman. I'll call a division, thank you. I know Councillor Leslie was about to do that, but I'll call one anyway. All those in favour say aye. Councillor O'Connors, Goodsell, Goodwin, Statham, McGee. Thank you. Against? Councillor Coleman, Leslie and Marnie. Thank you. Finance and Assets Report 11.5. Have somebody move this, please.
I'll move it.
Thank you,
Happy
Councillor
to
Goodwin.
second.
Have a seconder, thank you. A seconder, Councillor Goodsell. Councillor Goodwin.
No, I don't wish to speak on it.
Councillor Goodsell.
Sorry, I've got a lot to say today.
Time, please.
If this is passed tonight, I do hope that the news is reported responsibly and accurately to the public by newspapers, radio and by popular local social media outlets. I do hope it is reported factually and not with hysteria. Yes, it is important to report the figure of 45.7, which is our overall submission, and I'll talk to that in a moment. Most importantly, to me, the figure for residents like you and me has not changed. It remains at 27.7%, including the rate peg increase for residents, general businesses, business general, and farming rate categories. This is the figure that needs to be emphasised to those in our community, and those responsible for communication need to ensure that this is stated. To generate conversation around only 45.7 would be incredibly inaccurate, misleading and disappointing. At our meeting in November, we resolved a total SRV application of 34.3 plus an increase of 3.7. And for those that don't know, the difference between the 27.7, which is the residents, general business and farming, and the final percentage is made up from large businesses, energy providers, quarries and coal mines. I'd like to say that we have not as a council suddenly decided to increase from 34.3 to 42% plus the rate pegs. I don't know how to explain it perfectly, but it must be understood that the difference is in the future fund, which council were hoping to have finalised by now, where previously large businesses were providing 1.09 million directly into that fund. The future transition fund has not been able to be finalised in the short time frame. Therefore, those big businesses will now contribute their 1.09 million into rates, which has increased the overall application to 45.7, including the rate peg, the figure we originally took to the community. All this information was documented in dot point 3 of the resolution of council in November 2022. And again, council is committed to limiting increase to the residential farming and general business general, to 27.7, including the 3.7 rate peg. This has been enabled by larger contributions from the heavy industries. Our pensioner rebate has increased from 250 to 300. Importantly, just for this report, for the SRV application, is attached to this report is a detailed and expert report from Morrison Lowe regarding our community's capacity to pay. And the report breaks down our community into 5 distinct areas and identifies the key aspects of each household and detailed scrutiny of the impact of the SRV and the community's ability to pay. It has relevant comparisons to 4 other councils, Group 4 councils, and the ability to pay. I think the executive summary of that attached report, Capacity to Pay, is well worth a read, and this time frame has been really tight for our staff, and I would like to thank the finance team who have pulled this application together successfully. Again, to do nothing is not a choice. I find great comfort in heading into the future with the knowledge that increased rates will improve financial sustainability, maintaining existing services and reduce infrastructure backlog.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Anybody else wishing to speak to this?
Yes.
Councillor Marnie.
Thank you. Look, this is something that I laboured over, but I've got a principle, and my principle is that I'll own my decisions, and I'll explain my decisions to people. I appreciate Councillor Goodsell speaking to why she's made her decision. We've talked about previously that we had 10 operational deficits. That's what's reported to me as I came into council. It's not something that I could kick the can down the road and ask an incoming council to take responsibility for and allow that decline to continue. I raised a number of issues that I would like to have addressed, and I appreciate very much the fact that staff have provided a response to that and made time for me to talk to them. Probably the key one that continues to plague me is around the capacity to pay. I'm a little bit lost in a study that was done in 2004, which confirms property prices are a reasonable indication of capacity to pay. We're in a very distorted and somewhat perverse housing market in 2022. We've got unprecedented increases in property value. People who sat on a house that they bought in Lithgow 10 or 15 years ago for maybe 100,000 are now sitting on a 400. For people working, wages have stagnated. Pensioners' rates have not increased significantly. And for those in the rental market, it's a fairly horrendous space out there at the moment. I think this is the one we've got the limited amount of levers to apply. I appreciate that the increase of the pensioner rebate will mitigate that to some extent. I note pensioners around me, I live in a fairly modest spot. My rates are going up by $4.96 a week. So they're going up by close to $20 a month. So they'll go up by nearly $250 for the year. Now I can wear that, but I'm conscious of people in my street that are not on the wages I'm on. And for some in the rental market with increasing costs, it's something that we have to have as a primary focus as we move through this in the basis of fairness. I also, something that I do, like some people do say to me, it's another matter of hope and goodwill from me, but in regard to the asset management plans, which are critical to the long-term and effective maintenance of our assets, I do have confidence, and I don't think my confidence is misplaced, that we will arrive at that destination where we need to be. That will be a game changer for us as a council, and we won't have the engine blowing up because there's no oil in it because nobody checked it. We need to have those systems in place. I'm asking that we look at community development programs to be aware of some of the people in our community that will be adversely and significantly impacted by this. Whilst it's a cup of coffee for me, it means something more significant for others. So I've asked for a review of the affordability in regard to the pension rebate, and I appreciate that will be undertaken. I've also asked that we consider interest rates. Now, I understand there's some complexity there in equitably applying that. However, I would like to look at any other charges that we're applying to the retail sector in our main streets particularly, which is a significant concern for most of our community where that's going. I also spoke to the sewer and water dividends. I cannot walk by the fact that there are still people in 2023 who have their neighbour's sewer coming up through their house in places like Ascension Estate, down there around Tank Street. That's something that must be addressed. We've got to get these fundamentals right, and I spoke earlier on, and I appreciate again that these things are featuring in our applications for funding, and the money for the first stage of that improvement of the drainage in West Main Street, which is critical, and I also appreciate what's going on there with smoke testing and relining of sewers. In order to take this thing forward, we need the money, and we've got to. Unfortunately, the council has tried to limit the ratepayers' exposure to it, and I must acknowledge that large industry have stood up and taken on their share of the challenge. So, in summary, look, it's a difficult thing for me to vote for. There were people who will look at me in the eye and ask me how I've got here, but I believe I've made a decision on merit. I also just want to acknowledge a comment from Councillor Leslie and Councillor Coleman in regard to the importance of the asset groups that need to go first, and we need to fix our roads up. We need to fix our drainage systems up. though we need to maintain minimum funding to all our asset groups. So I thank the staff for their time, and I thank the community for their advice, unsolicited or asked from me. But it's a very hard decision, and I am confident Lithgow will see some significant benefits from it in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Anyone else wishing to speak? Right of reply, Councillor Goodwin.
Thank you. I'd like to speak if I may.
Councillor Leslie.
Just for the record, the item before us is application for a special rate variation. It is not finance and assets reports. In November, Lithgow councillors had the opportunity to quarantine this excessive rate hike so that for the next 2 years, the council could make a substantial hit on our failing roads and drains infrastructure. The council voted down the amendment put forward by Councillor Coleman and myself. Since there's no guarantee that these infrastructure shortcomings will be addressed, I intend to vote against this special rate variation application.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Any other speakers? Thank you. Councillor Goodwin.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. We've had many briefings and consultations, discussions in relation to this. We voted to start the process at the end of last year, and this is the next part of this process. There will be many more in the upcoming months. I've come to my decision during all of these meetings, and I've voiced my reasons why. We need to be sustainable into the future, and although it will impact me, this is the right way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goodwin. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? Councillor Leslie and Councillor Coleman. I'll have a division. Thank you. All those in favour say aye. Councillor Goodwin, Goodsell, O'Connor, Marnie, McGee and Statham. Thank you. Against? Councillor Leslie and Councillor Coleman. Thank you. 11.5.2 Investment Report November 2022. Have a mover, please.
Happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Have a seconder, thank you. Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Goodsell. Councillor O'Connor.
Yep, I just want to ask the question of the short-term loan. Who does that come from? Does it come from internal or does it come from the bank?
Mr. Gurney, thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor. It is an external loan sourced through a bank. It's a temporary loan which we review based on need each 3 months, but at the moment we're retaining it at $3.5 million due to the large number of natural disaster works that are continuing and the large grant-funded capital works program. It's next due for review in March, and we'll have another look at it then.
Thank you, Mr. Gurney. Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Anybody else wishing to speak on this? Councillor Marnie?
Just briefly, just again to acknowledge the significant bodies of work that are going on. The continuation of the Glen Davis Bridges project is a fantastic project, and obviously the expenditure into both urban roads at George Coates Street and also rural roads is also appreciated. So whilst some councillors may feel that my commentaries are politically motivated, I'm happy to acknowledge the receipt of those grants from the state government. I'll talk from where I stand as an individual. So I'm just thankful for the funding for those projects and the delivery of those by the staff in what is a pretty hectic operating environment at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Anybody else wishing to speak? Right of reply, Councillor Goodsell. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. All in favour except for Councillor Leslie. Thank you. 11.5.3 Investment Report December 2022.
Happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Don't wish to speak, Councillor O'Connor?
To speak, thank you.
Is there any dissent on this or anybody wishing to speak? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Councillor Leslie is against. Thank you. 11.6 Policies and Governance.
Happy to move.
Thank you,
Happy to
Councillor
second.
Coleman. Thank you, Councillor Marnie.
Point of order, Mayor Statham. It's not policies and governance, it's actually the September 2024 council election. And by saying policy and governance, it's really confusing for anyone who is listening, and for the record, it's going to be kept on the video.
Well, in my agenda, it says Policies and Governance 11.6.
Well, in my agenda, it says 11.61, General Manager, 23rd 01/2023, September 2024 council election. I mean, it's
11.6 policies and governance.
Anyway, my heading is Policies and Governments, and you can read underneath it's 23rd of the 1st, 2023, September 2024 council elections. Could I have somebody move this, please?
I've already moved
Coleman?
it.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Would you like to speak to that? And Councillor Marnie?
Just briefly, in the past, we've always engaged the New South Wales Electoral Commission. I think it's best that we stick with that. They know what they're doing, and the administration of the elections for the council is important to just stick to something that we actually know.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Marnie?
I've been a Democrat, not in the political sense, but in the importance of democracy. I have a lot of faith in our electoral systems in Australia. I don't have any desire or feeling to cast any aspersions on it. I do note that at times people do have concerns about it. As the only person who stood on pre-poll every day as a candidate, I was a recipient of some of those concerns, which were duly investigated by New South Wales Police and the State Electoral Council or Commission. So, thankfully, as always, all due process and proper process was at work in those situations, but nonetheless, it was an interesting experience for me running for council the first time. I also feel that I would like to reiterate or thank the council for their decision to use the countback system rather than by-elections, which noting the significant costs that state-run elections bear. So I'm very happy for the State Electoral Commission to run the election again. I'm sure it will be run as professionally and seamlessly as it was last time.
Councillor Marnie? Anybody else wishing to speak to this? Right of reply, Councillor Coleman. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? Unanimous. Thank you. 11.6.2, Policy 8.1, Excessive Water Usage Allowance for Breakages. Have somebody move this, please?
Yeah, I'm happy to move this.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Have a seconder, thank you. Councillor Goodsell. Councillor Marnie.
Briefly on this, I thank the staff for their work on this. It is an issue that comes up periodically where residents have inadvertently had damage to their water behind the meter, which has resulted in significant water bills. I know it's happened to me personally, and I can say that on occasions the smart meters work. I haven't come back to council asking for a rebate, but I appreciated the notification I got that I needed to make a repair. I think this outlines a much clearer pathway to our decision making, and it's an area that I have always watched this council previously, and this current council has always dealt with this matter fairly when clear evidence can be brought forward about the accidental breakage. So I think it's appropriate that we have a clearer policy, clearer guidelines for the going forward. So thanks to the staff for that.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Councillor Goodsell.
No, just reiterate what Councillor Marnie has stated factually.
Is there any more debate on this? Yeah. Councillor Leslie, thank you.
Yes, I'd like to just point out that the smart meters are actually working. I received an email, a letter from the council pointing out that there apparently was a water leak on my property, and indeed there was. And so I objected and fixed that, and I was appreciated that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Right of reply, Councillor Marnie.
Just say-
Councillor O'Connor, sorry.
Would it text, you know what I'm saying, if somebody received a text, instead of a lot of people are out working, they mightn't get an email, but they always get a text. And people can act on that a lot quicker than somebody that's gets an email, if you get what I'm saying.
Mr. Trapp.
Through you, Mayor Statham. So the system we utilise has a number of ways we can notify through email, letters, and the most common one is letters to the property owners, followed by emails and text messages. We utilise all those systems to send them out. One of the issues has been people getting their details to council. In those situations, property owners change their details sometimes, their mailing address, excuse me, and that's resulted in the leaked letters or the notifications going to the wrong place. So through this update of the policy and going to exhibition, this will hopefully clarify a lot of that and encourage more people to get their contact details up to date so we can inform you a lot quicker that you have a leak so it can be actioned a lot faster.
Thank you for that.
Sorry, Mr. Just one question.
Yes, Councillor Goodwin.
Do the emails that you get if you get notified of a leak, and if you're a renter, does that go to the rental agency or the owner?
So that's a decision for the property owner. In a lot of occasions, we have forwarded them straight to the property managers at the from what the owners desire us to do. We'll also send them one just out of courtesy though. But we update contact details to make sure, yes, if it is a rental, we'll check with the property manager, inform them, and then send something to the owner as well to make sure they're aware.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trapp. Are you happy with that, Councillor O'Connor?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Right of reply, Councillor Marnie. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous. Council committee reports. 12.1 Finance Committee meetings, the 23rd of November 22. Have somebody move this report, thank you.
Happy to.
I think Councillor Marnie, Councillor Goodsell, I'm not sure who was the first there. I'm not sure who. Councillor Marnie, Councillor Goodsell. Councillor Marnie, thank you.
No comment on this one. All the issues have been picked up in other
right,
reports.
thank you.
So thank you.
Councillor Goodsell. Okay, anybody else wishing to speak? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Hands up, I can't see, sorry. Councillor Leslie is against. The remainder of the council for 12.2 Audit Risk and Improvement Committee, ARIC, minutes of the 13th of December 2022.
Happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Have a seconder, thank you. Councillor Goodsell, thank you. Councillor Coleman.
I don't need to speak to this. The reports and the
Councillor
minutes are
Goodsell.
fine.
Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Leslie.
Could I get a little bit more information about the decision to dissolve the audit committee with the Oberon Council, and has it been determined who would be chairing a local committee?
Mr. Gurney.
Through you, Madam Mayor. It was an agreed decision with Oberon Council that resulted more or less from the committee, two reasons: the committee evolving and both councils having separate meetings using the same committee, but then also the new Office of Local Government guidelines on audit committees and risk management and internal audit. Oberon is a smaller council and they wanted to go their own way, and that was agreed with Lithgow Council. Sorry, the second part of your question was about the chair.
Yes.
So
what processes would be undertaken in this issue, yeah.
About 12 months ago, Council adopted a new terms of reference for the ARIC, and that allowed Council to elect its own chair. So there is currently an independent member of the committee who is a chair as per the terms of reference.
Thank you, Mr Gurney.
I'd forgotten that.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Any more debate? Councillor Coleman, put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous, thank you. Business of great urgency, councillors. Anybody wishing to speak up about business of great urgency? All right. Meeting is closed.
Yes, just a sec. If we could move or vote on a quick motion to make the Operations Committee back to monthly and to move it back just a few days from the Thursday, the 2nd I think it's due, to the Tuesday the 7th at 5 p.m. So just pushing it back about 5 days for this first meeting. Just because we've just got so many issues that just seem to be getting out of hand. You know, we've got grass all over the LGA that's taller than the guideposts, you know, so.
The General Manager has suggested a report will come back and it'll go into the next business agenda and it'll be voted on then when there's some clarity into exactly what your request is, Councillor McGee. Okay, well, we can just change it next year at the meeting on the 2nd then. That's fine. We'll do it in-house. Anybody else with matters of great urgency?
Just a question, is that possible? Because the council endorsed the decision of the Operations Committee to maintain 3 monthly meetings. Now, I disagreed with that, but that was the decision of this council. It's no longer a matter for the Operations Committee to say, well, whoopee, we have major issues. We've always had major issues, and suddenly we, it's become a political matter, so we're going change it. But it's a decision of the council and not a decision of the Operations Committee.
Councillor Leslie will come back here to be confirmed or denied, so you'll have the opportunity to speak up there.
But it can't be done at the Operations Committee meeting next.
No, it was at the next council meeting. Thank you. Councillor O'Connor.
Yeah, this may be not major news or anything, but I'm just kicking up about the cost of fuel in Lithgow compared to Bathurst and everywhere else. We're 15 and 16 cents dearer in Lithgow than comparable towns around the place. And I know we can't, fine, I know we can't do anything about it, but somebody should bring it up somewhere and make them bloody bring it back the same as it's price gouging. That's all I'm saying.
I'm sure the person who always talks about making political statements might raise an issue on this one.
I don't understand what the question is, sorry. Can we...
It's just a statement, Councillor Coleman. Yes. Obviously, we all agree with Councillor O'Connor. It is more expensive, and I've had 2 reports this week about it, actually. I don't know whether the General Manager could write to the governing body and get an audit on this. Mm-hmm.
It's not really our problem.
Pardon? Not our
You
problem.
decide if it's urgent, and we don't have any information over it. We acknowledge it.
I acknowledge Councillor O'Connor definitely, but I can't make it a matter of great urgency because it's not a council. But I do actually commend you for bringing that up. Hopefully some people out there tonight that have got access to working at outlets will realise what they're doing, or people out there that are watching will realise and pass on this situation to the people that serve them at the fuel stations.
Can I just ask a quick question, and just in regard to the issue Councillor McGee brought up, I'm just obviously concerned about not creating layered work for staff, asking them twice. Could we, in that report, look at the timetabling of committee meetings, just so it just gives us a little bit of an opportunity to plan around our own? For me, largely it's largely around my professional life, but also just any other things, just be able to see what's coming up at us in the next, say, 6 months. So if the report could possibly address that issue as well as the timing of the operational committee meetings, but I actually support your suggestion.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie.
If I could put my 2 bobs worth in then, I'd recommend 6 weekly. I wouldn't go quarterly. Certainly wouldn't go monthly, but maybe.
Councillor, this isn't discussed now. We will get a report back, and then every councillor then can have their say when it comes to a vote. Any other business, great urgency? I'll close the meeting at 9:25. Is it 9:25? Thank you, and thank you to the public gallery for taking the time to come along tonight. We do appreciate that. Thank you to the councillors and staff.